Sometimes the critics can be right, but other times they can be utterly wrong. And in this video, I am going to be talking about my top 5 movies that I like that are rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, for a movie to make this list, it has to be under 50%. So movies that technically, like, let's give an example of like Die Hard with Vengeance and Top Gun. They have like a 58%, I think, on Rotten Tomatoes, and they do have a rotten sign, even though they still have more bad reviews than good. I mean, good reviews than bad reviews. They will not be included because they have over 50%. So those are not able to. So they are not allowed to be in this because I do love both movies. They are both outstanding, and so some so of course we're definitely going to disagree because we all have different opinions on which movies resonate with us in certain ways, and some of these you may not think are very good. One of them I think you may find an utter abomination, possibly. Well, if you've even seen it, and think it's very cringeworthy. But with that said, let's get started. At number 5, I have Yogi Bear. Now, this is the one I was talking about early, or that some people may say, "Oh man, this movie is terrible." Now, I don't really hate this movie. I think it's pretty funny at times. Now, that might be one of some people's main problem, that it just is very cringy, and that most people are like, that's just weird. And I'll agree with you there. There are some moments that are like, okay, that's a bit weird, and some of the characters are not the best. Like the mayor is by far, without question, a dumb character, and probably would have won a Razzie if this film actually was famous enough to earn it. It has like a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty crazy. And this movie is all around, it's a fun time, and I find the movie watchable. And I do think that Boo Boo is a very good scene stealer. He's played by Justin Timberlake, and he can be really funny at times. He's a scene stealer. Of course, the big standout here is Yogi, who is utterly hilarious and always does some things that just make him extremely stupid, yet you think he's very funny while he's doing it. So, while some people may think that this film is an utter abomination, I think that it's a fun but flawed movie. At number 4, I have Bruce Almighty. Now, this movie was also panned by critics. It has like a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, something around it's in the 40s on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think this movie's hilarious. And just the big standout here is, of course, Jim Carrey, who gives an amazing performance, because this is one of his like movies where, like in the mid 90s and like early 2000s, he was known to be playing in like PG-13, like crass, like like movies that would have a lot of sex jokes in them. That it is hilarious, and it'll lean into that a lot. Like, it will have some scenes that look like they're going somewhere, but then they had to cut off screen because, well, I mean, the movie's PG-13, so. And I do think this movie is amazingly. The pacing is. It is kind of unpredictable, and the pacing is not the best, but I do think that there's some really good laugh out loud moments. The ending I thought was amazing and just the way that Bruce is like, and one of the sacrifices he makes, which I'm not going to spoil it, but it is outstanding how mature he is, and coming from a Jim Carrey character, that's not very easy, because Jim Carrey is not the most mature when he plays his characters, if you know what I mean. I'll give you some examples. And anyway, he's just so funny in the role of this, and he can be very, very obnoxious, yet at the same time very vulnerable. At number 3, we have Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Okay, this is obviously the best of the Transformers sequels, which is not saying much considering all of the Transformers sequels other than this one were utter garbage. I'm not counting Rise of the Beast and Bumblebee, though. But this one has a 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the higher up, I guess lower on the list that we're going means that we're means the better movies we're getting. So I obviously really enjoyed this movie. I think this movie is a really fun time whenever I watch it. I watch it like often sometimes because I think that the original is a classic in my opinion, and the third movie is awesome and has by far the best of any Transformers third act. It is spectacular seeing just you if you want to see robots tearing each other apart, like cities being destroyed, uh, and a huge death count. This film is for you because like this film was barely able to get the PG-13 rating. And nearly it could have gotten an R, and people probably wouldn't argue with that because, boy, this film is dark, and well, I mean it's in the name, Dark of the Moon, and I mean some of the story elements aren't the best, and the characters don't really have a good character arc. But other than that, I think this movie is enjoyable, and this is what I call a popcorn movie, where I enjoy it a lot more than I should. And let's not forget the amazing scene with Optimus going and destroying so many things in Chicago. Let me show you. And all in all, just a really fun time, and definitely a fun time whenever I watch it. At number two, I have all of the Rambo sequels. Now, the Rambo franchise has not been kind to a general. Now, the first film is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and then you go all the way to Rambo First Blood Part 2, which is in the 30s. Rambo 3 has a 41%. John Rambo, or Rambo, has a 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. And Rambo Last Blood, which is one of the greatest of all the Rambo movies, has a 27% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is baffling to me because that movie is awesome. And it does have some very brutal scenes. For example, the heart scene, which I am not going to show because I would probably get in a lot of trouble with YouTube if I showed that very graphic scene. But I do think that these movies are all enjoyable. This is probably a popcorn movie set as well because most people are big fans of John Rambo, even if the critics weren't. But very few people really enjoy Last Blood like I do. Most people just absolutely trash this movie, and it does not deserve it. So that is the reason why it is on this list and why it was at number 2. But of course, my favorite movie that is negative on Rotten Tomatoes is Home Alone 2: Lost in New York. Okay, I take personal offense to this. The fact is, this has like a 35% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is hilarious. It is the funniest in the franchise by far, and it is probably the most heartfelt by far. I like the original a tad bit more, but that's not a knock against it. It also makes the original better. It also makes this one better. These movies are just so amazing. These two I always watch on the holidays now, and it is hilarious because the first one, we go from just traps that would just be like, ouch, and a few that could have killed them, like the ice on the stairs and the painting cans, which the painting cans would have cracked their skulls, and Harry almost broke his neck doing that. But this one, it's full out. They would have been killed multiple times. Like the fact is, there are several scenes, especially with Marv, that they're almost killed, and I feel like this movie is hilarious. And this one always felt like a grown-up movie when I saw the cover of it. It looked weird to me, and I don't know why, but it looked kind of like it was like just a music album or something. I was young, I was stupid, and I was like, what is this? This looks like a grown-up movie that mom and dad would never let me watch. And it looked just utterly weird, and this movie is hilarious, and it gives the magic that 3 through 6 would immediately try and demolish. Looking at you, Home Alone 3, Home Alone 4, Home Alone 5, and Home Alone 6, you deserve all the hate you get. But Home Alone 2, you are magnificent. Thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to. It's completely up to you. And I will see you all in my next video. Have a good one.